Good evening, members. I'm Councillor Kyle Robinson-Payne and I'm the new chair of the Audit Committee. Welcome to this meeting. Just to begin with, items 5, 6 and 7 will have to be deferred as the reports for this meeting were only received yesterday. And it's also been noted that there were a number of errors included and they will need to be rectified. And it was felt it wouldn't be beneficial to bring them to this meeting. Therefore, we're going to look at organising an extra meeting in the month of July to receive those reports so that members have plenty of time to look through them and digest them. And then if you've got any comments or questions, they can be brought to that meeting. So item 1, I want to start with apologies for absence. We received one apology and that was from Councillor Creamer. And I'd just like to thank Councillor Roy Allen for substituting for Councillor Creamer. I don't think there's any other apologies. Everyone's here. So we'll move on to item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of March 2023. Councillor Barnes?
Approve, yes.
Yeah, you move in them, Councillor Barnes,
yes,
thank you.
Yeah.
And have I got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greensmith. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. That's approved. Can we now move to item 3, any declarations of interest from members? No declarations of interest, thank you. I'm now going to propose that we move item 8 up the agenda to allow for the external auditor and the Mazars audit progress report to be reported on. So can I move over to Mark?
Certainly, and thank you and good evening to you all. Again, just for completeness, I'm Mark Surridge, I'm the external auditor and I'm responsible for signing off your financial statements for 21-22 and beyond. We realise it's been a short while since we've given you a progress of where things are at, so what we've set out is a short document, just a couple of pages. First set just reminds you of what our responsibilities are as your external auditor, because I appreciate after elections you might get a change and actually might not know what we do. So that just sets out the scope of our work. And then on the second page, it's just to say that we are looking at the work on the financial statements for the year ended March 22. The majority of the work was done. We've now gone through a process of going through our own internal consultations to make sure that our audit approach is robust and appropriate. That's been completed. So we now have a plan in order to finish off the remainder of the work. The team is set to come in over the summer, and then we'll report the findings of that to you as soon as it's done. So it's fundamentally there to give you some assurance that our plans are in place and that we will report the results of our work in due course. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm now going to open this up to members. Are there any comments or questions to Mark? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. Forgive me for having not been on this committee previously, so it may have been covered in previously. Item 1.2 mentions due to an ongoing fraud investigation. Do we know what that? Are we allowed to know what that's about?
Mark, yeah, can you answer that? Yeah.
So I do know what it's about. I'm just looking to Mike just because I don't know 100% what I'm allowed to say yet, yeah. So I'd rather defer there. All I can say is I know what it's all about and it's factored into my approach, and I know that I do not need to take any action right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members may know, and it has been reported in the press, that we discovered a potential fraud in around October, November time We can't discuss it at this point in time. All we can say is what was released in that press release at the time. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Greensmith.
Thank you, Chair. So can I just confirm that I've got my thinking straight, Mark? You're still doing the outstanding audit on 21-22 accounts. What's happening regarding 22-23? Thank you.
Mark?
So it's just the sequence of events we need to go through. So you're right, we still need to finish the 21-22 audit, and we can't start the 22-23 until this audit's finished, because the figures flow into the opening balances of the next year. And until we know the opening position is right, we can't move on to the next step. So it's just a sequence of events. We do have a plan for 22-23, but we won't be bringing that to you until we finish this piece of work, because otherwise it's quite easy to get confused. I mean, it certainly confuses me sometimes trying to work out what's happening when, but it will flow through in due course.
Are there any other comments or questions from members? No? So I'm going to move from the chair the recommendations that members receive the auditor's audit progress report for the year ended the 31st of March 2022, prepared by Mazars. Have I got a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Allen, thank you very much. All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Thank you, members. Okay, so we now then move back up the agenda to item 4, which is the Corporate Risk Management Scorecard Q4 22-23. And I'm now going to ask Mike to lead on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just moving down from a microphone, so I'm shuffling down. But first of all, thank you, Mark, for coming. You've come quite a long way, haven't you? And thank you for tonight. So, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Take care. So the Corporate Risk Management Scorecard. So I'll go back to basics because I know some of you are new members here. So we have a risk management strategy and framework that was written and approved by Cabinet back in October 2017. We do have a vacancy as a head of finance and IT at the moment. So ordinarily that would have been refreshed in the current financial year. Well, sorry, last financial year. But because of that vacancy, it wasn't done. So that is on the urgent to-do list to refresh the risk management strategy. Having said that, I imagine it won't be a substantial change because, you know, the beauty of a risk management strategy is they're fairly consistent between years because it's the principles that are agreeing in a strategy, not the content within. So that's a piece of work that is outstanding. So as part of corporate risk, we have different levels of risk. So we have what we call a corporate risk register, which is the high-level strategic risks, and that is the point of the report today. We have 13 headings, which we believe cover every possible risk any organisation would ever face, and you know, we do slot in the risks under those 13 headings, and I'll go through those today. The way it works is each department sits underneath that. Each head of service has their own risk register, and they manage that at a departmental level. And if they believe that something is a significant risk that requires uplifting to the corporate risk scorecard and register, then that's the process. That will, the head of service will elevate that onto here, and then we will report on that basis. Again, risk for all projects, all major projects, we also have a projects risk register. Again, that would feed into the departmental risk register, and if there's a serious perceived problem, then that would elevate into here. So I hope that explains the process, and we bring it to this committee every quarter for an update. Risk is one of those things that's not always mitigated, so you have what we call a raw risk, which is if you've got no controls in place and you let it run wild, you know, this is the worst case scenario that could happen, and that gets a score in our risk process. You then have a current risk, which basically says we've taken certain actions, certain mitigations, which now bring it down to this level, and that's what we're working with at a council. And then at the end is a target risk. So that is, with every control in the world ever perceived and thought of, we can only get it down to this level. And not every risk will ever go to green. It depends where it sits in that spectrum. So as you see, we may say there's no risks outstanding, but it could still be an amber because that is the lowest target risk we accept or think it could get reduced to. So on that basis, I'll go through the 13 risks. So the first one is failure to prevent budget overheating once the budget has been set. So in layman's terms, this is budget monitoring in year. So as you can expect, in Q1, we normally put this to an amber because we're unsure how the year ahead is going to pan out. And then as we get through to Q2, Q3, and if we are reporting underspent at that point, then that risk drops into a green level. So Q4, obviously at this point in time, we're still working on the outturn, but it looks like the outturn, as we expected in Q4, would be an underspend. So therefore, this risk is at a green. So it has been reduced from Q3 to Q4 as a green. And what that means is, as we've got there, it's a low likelihood and negligible impact. So in terms of financial costs, the risk value is between £50,000 and £500,000. But as I say, at Q3, the projected net underspend for the council was £57,000. So on that basis, the risk was dropped to a green. Of course, it goes out the window for Q1. When we report again in a couple of months' time, that will probably go higher again because we've got the risks moving forward in the new year. So risk 2 is probably the more concerning one for everyone, and you can see it in the scorecard at the end. This is the highest risk that the council has. We're not alone. I'm sure every council has this as the highest risk at the moment, and for that reason, it's in the red zone of the spectrum. So, for those of you who were councillors previously, on the 2nd of March this year, we took the annual budget report to full council. That suggested we need to find further financial savings, efficiencies, if you like, of, I think it was, is it in here, £2.8 million. As yet, that is unidentified, but that is on the work programme over the next 3 years to try and deliver. So the reason it's risk is obviously the sheer volume of that, 2.8 million, and it puts a lot of pressure on the Cabinet and senior officers to deliver and find those efficiencies. We've taken nearly 8 million out of the council since the government started pushing us back in 2010-11 to find efficiency savings. So they did this by reducing the revenue support grant and everything else, so that reduced the grant coming into the council, and then all the councils had to react and find efficiency savings in their operations. As you'd expect in year one, there was some low-hanging fruit that were quite easy and painless to take out, but as we've gone through 10 years of this, we really are struggling, not struggling to identify the 2.8 million, but the decisions are harder for members to make. So at the moment, that budget report stands at 2.8 million efficiencies that has not yet been identified. We do have some plans and they will come to Cabinet in due course for that. But going back to the risk register, that is why this is classed as a red risk, because it is a large number. Right, if we move on to risk item number 3, which is failure to protect staff, including health and safety issues. So this is currently at an amber level, no change from the previous quarter. We do have a new health and safety officer who started a few months ago. Prior to that, we struggled to recruit after the previous one left. Consequently, a number of things weren't reviewed, a bit like the risk register. There was the business continuity register, which we'll come on to later. And the health and safety procedures needed an annual refresh. So work is ongoing with that at the moment, and in Q4, the new team continued their programme of delivery and checking and reviewing the full risk assessments for service areas. The next step, once we've checked those, is to make sure we take those mitigating actions and processes and make sure we implement those moving forward. So this is one of those we will never reduce health and safety risks because, it's impossible. You don't know what's around the corner, but we can do our best to try and mitigate the risks we have and can identify. So in terms of actions outstanding to be delivered, we need to continue with the programme of inspections, certainly of properties, and, as I say, working practices, and make sure we engage and start to deliver those identified risks. And another one, you've probably seen plastic carriers screwed to the walls around the building. So this is our new approach to fire evacuation procedures as well. So the team are very busy in reviewing all of these. That will give us more up-to-date information of where to stand if the fire alarm goes, where's the meeting points, and the processes staff need to go through, if the fire alarm goes off. So that's just one of the actions that we're working on at the moment. In terms of risk 4, this is about failure to recruit and retain staff and maintaining internal capacity. Clearly linked to the finances, as we've reduced staff budgets enforced by the cuts at a national level. Clearly there's been consequences on staff, and those efficiencies do come in. But personally, I think we're virtually at the lowest level of staff numbers we can have now. So this is a risk here, and that's why it's maintained at amber, which is the same as it was last quarter. So we are seeing now examples of councils competing with each other, which is a shame. So, neighbouring councils are paying more for people like planning officers. We've lost 3 planning officers in the last quarter. So we now need to offer market supplements, which again comes to affordability, to try and attract suitable qualified staff to replace the superb members of staff that we've left. And it's not their fault, it's the current situation. That's where we are. It's down to our finances and how much we can pay people. But there is a huge risk that capacity could be challenged moving forward. So again, that's an area that we need to focus on if we can, and we need to find the money to make sure we do that. So actions completed during Q4. So we reviewed the Equality Framework and Action Plan, so equal opportunities for all, and that was a key piece of work that we delivered. We've also produced and Council approved on the 2nd of March a new 4-year Gedling plan, which takes us from 2023 to 2027. And this was very much a strategic document, so it slimmed down the previous version to recognise the higher levels and a strategic focus that the Council needs to work to. And of course, recognising the restrictions on capacity to deliver. And again, below that, linking into the hierarchy, service plans for each department have been produced underneath that as well. What we're also doing, we have a system called Pentana, which is the Council's performance monitoring system. So all the actions from service plans, equalities, audit recommendations, they're all now being proactively managed through that Pentana system. So we've had a real push in the last few months to try and get them all recorded on there, and then I can hold heads of service to task to make sure they tick these off and deliver on them. But again, recognising capacity issues in every part of the council. So what's outstanding? Well, we need to continue to monitor the national review of the impact of the national living wage. So you may or may not be aware, last year, council made a decision to basically scrap Band 2, which was our lowest spinal column point for the council because of standards of living. We are a caring council, and that moved everyone onto the top of Band 3, which I think was spinal column point 5. So that is now slightly above the national living wage, but again, The government sets that target, and I'm sure it won't be long before that increases again, and that will have an impact on, our position as a council and increase the costs for the workforce. So we need to monitor that national position. We do work with the universities to look at opportunities for apprenticeships. And again, we're working on that. We have great allegiances with the two universities. They do offer placements over the summer. Some are free of charge. Obviously, some we have to pay for, a gap year as such. But we do have those relationships, and we need to keep building on those. We need to look at the review, look at the recruitment options. So we've noticed if you look at our recruitment page on the website, it's a bit drab, in all honesty. So we've looked at good examples out there, and we're trying to brighten that up to encourage people who don't live in the borough or wherever to start applying for council jobs. Again, flexible working is part of that offer. Some people like it, some people don't like it, but the reality is it's a buyer's market out there, and if we don't offer flexible working to people wanting to come into employment, they'll go somewhere else, and that's the reality. So we do need to see what the council's offer is in terms of that. And again, agile working during COVID, it was a bit of a rush to get everybody with laptops. There was a world shortage of laptops, so it caused a bit of fuss nationally. We did get those arrangements in place fairly quickly, and again now we're looking at reviewing those agile working arrangements, not only IT-wise but office-wise as well, and seeing if people are more suitable to work from home if they wish to do so, and if that meets the business need, and that is the key. It must meet the business need. So risk 5 is failure to properly utilise existing ICT, react to technology changes and prevent data loss. So this is all around IT, its use, sweating the assets as they call it, and of course cyber security as well. And cyber security was the feature of a BDO report at the last audit committee, as you've just seen in the minutes. Clearly because cyber risks are very dangerous to us, that was included in the confidential part of this committee. And that's the reason why, so we don't expose all our flaws, if there are any, I'm not saying they are, if there are any, to the wider public. So what have we done to address this risk? So what we've done, we hired an external company to do a baseline review of the ICT service. Because we don't know what we don't know. We have some excellent team in IT, but we don't know how up to date they are. We think they're up to date and on the mark, but we don't really know that, so we wanted external assurance for that. And as it happens, the findings of the report says we do have an excellent IT team who are forward-looking. The next stage of that, which comes on to the actions outstanding, is to take it the level further, which is to start looking at the digital strategy for the council, where we want to be in terms of IT provision, whether we want to engage with use of artificial intelligence, robotics and things like that. So we're commissioning that piece of work which will give us the IT strategy moving forward, and then we can set ourselves on the right footing. But the key thing here is that the internal team is very, very good and very efficient, but we need to have a view on the future. So, as I've just mentioned, the cybersecurity internal audit was finalised at the last meeting with a number of recommendations in there. And again, the ongoing review of the disaster recovery plan, including a consideration of the location of the second storage area network. So that's if this building goes down, we can divert all operations to the suggested other building. And the other action outstanding is to finalise the review and update of the information security policy as well. So there's a few things we're working on there. Sorry, Chair, if I'm taking too long.
No, carry on.
But
I'll go to questions at the end.
that's fine, yes, thank you. So risk 6 is failure to protect and utilise physical assets. These are our buildings. How safe are they? How fit for purpose? Do we keep registers for fire, asbestos, Legionella testing and everything else? And how they're recorded on a database. So what we've been doing over the last 6 to 9 months is looking at all our buildings, again looking at the general condition surveys of those buildings and what they're like moving forward. So this has identified, buildings that need significant capital investment into them to keep them operational. There are now, a bit like your house, energy ratings. Well, businesses now have to have those as well. And if you do rent the buildings out, then I think it's in 2 years' time, you have to meet a certain energy level. If we don't meet that, we have to spend a lot of money to invest in those properties to get the energy rating up. If we don't do that, we cannot rent them to our tenants. So things like industrial estates would be significantly affected. So this condition survey is looking at all that suitability and making a plan for backlot repairs and future needs as well, which again, everything comes down to cost. So it's a piece of work that's crucial and we'll get that prepared. So in terms of actions outstanding, we need to complete those condition suitability surveys. We don't have an asset management plan at the moment, so we are writing one which tells us about, whether we should invest in buildings we want to keep, whether we should maintain them at current levels, or whether we don't need them for current and future operations and we simply want to dispose of them. So all that review is ongoing in the background. The other area is bed and breakfast accommodation. So the council has, we did have 11 temporary accommodation units. Last year, council approved a budget to purchase 8 new houses, effectively. So far, we've purchased 7, and there was a further budget approved by Cabinet at budget times, in fact, in March. So that allowed for another 8 houses to be purchased, which will help alleviate the pressures on bed and breakfast. We've got 2 bids waiting to be accepted there. So not only once we've bought them do we put tenants in them, but we have to make sure those additional properties are safe and meet our housing standards as well. So again, there's a mention there that we do need to look at the suitability of our temporary accommodation, not only ones we bought, but the previous ones we had as well. So that's extra duties that we need to work to for our staff. So risk 7 is failure to react to changes in legislation. So we don't know what's coming. But at the moment, there are 3 areas of legalities going through. So there's the Brazil case. This is about calculation of leave for part-time workers. So those mainly who work term time only. Bit of case law, whether they should get full entitlement or pro rata, and that is going on through the courts. Once that is determined, it will most likely apply to Gedling Borough Council in terms of the casual staff mainly employed at leisure centres, and we may need to change those processes as well. There's also something around the MacLeod case, which is around pensions. It's about how you determine the pension liabilities for each authority's employees. I believe this was mainly around the fire authorities, so we need to be aware of it, but as far as I'm aware, it's not really any impact on Gedling Borough Council at the moment, but until the legislation is resolved, we need to keep a watching brief on that. The other one is clearly the government's pushing the environmental consequences, and there was an Environmental Act last year produced. At the moment, that requires food waste to be collected from all properties. It was going to be fairly quickly, but I believe now they've pushed it back to 2027. Probably the reasons they've realised we need to push it back is because no council at this point in time can afford to purchase many more refuse vehicles, for example. So at the moment, the Environment Act suggests these things, but it doesn't come with any funding. So that is one that, again, is seriously concerning, not just us, but many councils across the country. How can we implement the requirements of the Environment Act without associated funding coming with it? So that's, again, one we're watching on the scene there. So you can see that these things don't move quickly, and there are actions outstanding, but we're as up to date as we can be on those matters. So risk 8, failure of contractors or partnership arrangements. So this is about breaches, terms of contract, from a legality point of view. It's about failure of contractors and those partnership arrangements, and that's where they failure to deliver either on cost or on quality or a combination of both. At the moment, with the head of finance and IT post being vacant, another one of his actions was previously to update the procurement strategy and the procurement system we used, which is called Intend. So that is still currently outstanding, pending the recruitment of that post. So that will be addressed this year. And we do have requirements to publish a contract register for all contract opportunities on our website. This is currently done, but the Intend software would facilitate and make it a much smoother approach. So that is something we need to look at. And again, from a legal perspective, we now look at all the indemnity clauses in all of our contracts, many contracts this council has, and we need to look and check the indemnity clauses to ensure they reflect the council's risk appetite moving forward. So risk 9 is inability to defend one-off challenges. So this is about a challenge, mainly in the planning area, I would suggest. So, you know, we do have occasions from now and then, not just us, but all councils, where members go against a council officer decision, and sometimes they are challenged. That risk would sit under this heading, risk 9 at the moment. So in terms of actions completed, one risk was about self-employed instructors, in that they should be regarded as council staff, and we have made a concerted effort now to move a lot of our agency staff, especially the long-time agency staff, onto into employed status by the council to eliminate that risk. We have had an issue with taxi licensing fees that has gone through publicly and through the Environment and Licensing Committee as well. And in that regard, we now have a process of refunds in operation. Taxi drivers are facilitated to make an application, and those refunds will be made. Not everybody's come forward so far, but we are pushing and trying to make it as clear to everyone out there who was affected and are eligible to claim. So that process is ongoing at the moment. So actions outstanding, continue to work around the employment status of individuals. So risk 10 is about customer services, customer satisfaction, maintaining service standards. Again, capacity links to this, so all these risks are interrelated, as hopefully you're coming to see. This one at the moment is set to green, no change from the last quarter. So we do monitor customer complaints as well as customer compliments. We do fortunately get a lot of compliments as well, but we monitor them and the trends moving forward each quarter and make sure we're up to speed with any problems that may or may not be being brought to us. There is also a draft report I've seen this morning at SLT around the customer services strategy. That will be brought to Cabinet in due course fairly soon, and that sets out the strategy for how we engage, modern ways of working, engage with our customers and residents. You're probably aware we've now got a number of hubs across the borough. We go out to Calverton and places like that to try and engage with our customers and help the burden of consulting with the council and try our absolute best to help them make benefit claims where necessary and give proper advice like that. So that's all detailed in the customer services strategy that will be coming to Cabinet soon. So risk 11 is about the council's reputation. So a major one is the council has made a declaration that we will be carbon neutral by 2030. Time is ticking on this. So we do have a carbon management strategy and action plan, and we're working hard to make sure that we deliver on these actions so that we are carbon neutral by 2030. Again, the caveat is a lot of these interventions need money, and we're doing our best. So that's sort of where we are on that. And to continue that focus across the council, we have now set up a new corporate environment group where all heads of service attend and present with what they're doing each quarter to help and meet the carbon agenda. So risk 12 is about an environmental incident or malicious act. So this is basically emergency planning. At the moment it's amber. Again, I don't think it'll ever be green because just like that, an emergency incident could happen. So this is at amber. What we've done, we recognised again with the former health and safety manager leaving that the business continuity plans needed a refresh, and we held a workshop about a month ago now with all heads of service, senior officers to update all the business continuity plans, and they are now being checked, reviewed and summarised so we can start to develop those plans and any mitigations moving forward. We did try and procure this from the county council because many borough councils around Nottinghamshire do that. Unfortunately, we were not last to the table, but they only had a number of officers, and they've allocated those to other authorities. They did promise to take another one on that would help ourselves and another local authority nearby to occupy the time for that additional post. But they're affected just like us with recruitment, and they haven't managed to recruit to that person either. Consequently, we're now on plan B, which is to try and work this internally. So we're working on our emergency planning strategy internally with the health and safety manager and the head of governance as well. So we're working really hard to try and address these, but you can see the impact of capacity and vacancies, not only in our organisation but others, does have a real impact, everywhere. So we need to build on that work when we get the internal work delivered. We're currently reviewing it, and then we'll determine what the emergency planning resource requirements will be moving forward. And you're probably aware Martin's Law has come out now, which was a direct response to the Manchester Arena bombings. So this requires, for large events where I think it's something like 900 attendees attend the event, we have to, and not just us, every body has to make appropriate arrangements for security. So things like the weekend where we've just had the Arnold event, we've had to have a mind on this. We work with the police and other partners to make sure those security arrangements are in place. And finally, risk 13, this is the long-term effect. So this is about socio-economic trends. So this is where if the Borough of Gedling suddenly shifts from, the average age of 55 to the average age of 70, say, we have to have an eye, or I have to have an eye on our services and change those and adapt those to meet the needs of a changing society. So this is the long-term strategic viewpoint. Part of this, if the Mayor goes ahead, the Mayoral Authority through the East Midlands Mayoral County Combined Authority, that is still waiting for the legislation to be passed before that comes through. But if it does go through Parliament and we elect a mayor next May 24, then a lot of that strategic viewpoint of the changes social and demographically in Nottinghamshire will be looked after by the mayor, and we would work with that person to change it. So I think my voice is going now, Chair, but I think that takes us through all those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for that thorough update. Now going to move to comments or questions from members. Is there any comments or questions from members for Mike? Councillor Greensmith?
I've got a couple of questions. Have we got any idea yet as to how much VAT we're going to get back from HMRC? Have we got any idea of a figure yet, or is that still rumbling along?
In truth, through you, Chair, no. So we worked with our VAT consultant many years ago. I think it's about 12 years ago. We put the VAT claim in and updated it since that time. I know what the figure is, what the claim is, but I don't want to publicly say that. But the tribunal has agreed that leisure for councils is non-business. So what that means is where we used to charge, a price plus 20%, we don't have to charge that 20% now, and we are now able to reclaim that from the government, from HMRC, sorry. So as I say, I know what the figure is, it's quite substantial, but whether we will be paid that amount and when, we're still not clear.
Sorry. I appreciate we can't talk about the fraud case because that's still rumbling along, but I know there's quite a few new members. Maybe we could have a closed session at some point and have an update on what you can or can't. Let us know and let the new members have an idea as to what it's regarding. It's just a thought.
Mike?
I believe Alison Ball did that to the last set of members, so I'm sure we can accommodate that again. Yes, Chair.
Okay, is that all, Councillor Greensmith? Yeah. Are there any other? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, yes. Well, during your explanation of risk 4, you mentioned that we were having planning officers poached by neighbouring authorities. Is there a sort of a national shortage of planning officers? Is that the reason why councils are poaching them from each other?
Through you, Chair. It's not just planners. Unfortunately, it's lawyers, legal team, accountants, planners, environmental health officers. So the people who do the food inspections for the shops and things. So it really is a difficulty. You'll be aware. Drivers was an issue about a year ago because of the changes through Brexit. We lost a few drivers, not a lot. We lost a few to, again, neighbouring authorities who could offer better payment arrangements, but because we looked at the pay quite quickly at that point in time, it managed the process and we managed to retain a lot of the staff. But, if you looked around the country in the news, some councils couldn't even collect the bins because they were either on strike or lack of drivers, which was a real situation. So for us, planners is key at the moment. As I say, environmental health, finance, all the professional services, and it'd be unfair not to say others as well. It's a real problem out there at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Strong.
Yes, I'm interested in item 3, the health and safety issues. You mentioned that there is a risk assessments have not been done. Are these risk assessments on tasks? Wait a moment, I wrote it down. Are they on tasks or on the workplace, for instance? What proportion are overdue? I'll just bring this out. And has this been because you've had a shortage of a health and safety officer, or is it is that the only person who can do risk assessments?
Thank you, Chair. So we have a system called AssessNet where we undertake all our risk assessments. It's an electronic system. And all heads of service managers do update their risk assessments on a regular basis. Obviously, some do, some don't, depending on the capacity. I'm not saying everybody's perfect, but most of them do try and update them. What happens then once you've done the risk assessment, it goes to your manager to sign off. And then after the manager, then it goes to the health and safety officer effectively to review all that processes. And these risk assessments have a review date. Some are 6 months, some are 12 months, some are 3 years. So with the changes, I would say the services out there and service managers have done the risk assessments, but they probably haven't gone through the whole process of being formally signed off. So I'm not saying it's a risk of risk assessments not being done. They are being done. It's just not being formally challenged and signed off, which is where we're trying to catch up on that process effectively. And also, in the old days, it used to be a manual system, so not everyone has been moved onto the electronic system. So in terms of what risk assessments are, I would say, just top of my head, working at height. So if you work from a ladder, you know, it won't have changed from 3 years ago. You should still secure a ladder if you're going up one, but it's just that review process that hasn't been formally signed off. But, you know, that's where the governance comes in, and that's what we're trying to address.
Yeah, if I come back, so it's basically if there's any change that would merit a change to the risk assessment. Can I also follow on, because I was interested in the fact you're doing fire safety review, and something that occurs to us to me as a new person, you don't know who's going to be in the building. So I was hoping that would be taken into account when you do the fire safety review, like some sort of register.
Yes, we're currently looking at that, Chair, at the moment. So in the old days, when everyone was in the office, we knew exactly who they were. We had room checkers who would tick off everybody in the office. We'd all congregate in the meeting place, pass that signed-off sheet to a regional, or a wing, if you like, a wing inspector, who then sent that again to the main coordinator of fire. So we knew everybody was out the building. Since COVID, that's not been so easy. So start of COVID, we did have a register to people to sign in who was in the building. Now we're just reviewing the whole processes. So whoever's in charge, you know, so I'm not in the office 5 days a week. Mainly am, but not every day. So if I'm not there, we have a list locally maintained by our executive support team who say the person in charge in the building, the most senior person in the building today is so-and-so, and then that process happens again. So that whole process is being reviewed. We're getting different zones. So my office is Brown Zone 9 or whatever. So, you know, the purpose of these plastic containers on the walls is for me to go out when the fire alarm sounds, grab that, and it will tell me who I need to check off and which rooms. So it's simplifying that process there. It'll never be perfect, but, you know, we do go out and check all the toilets and everything else. So between us, that is the way it will work. And also we're getting a new fire alarm, which you've probably seen on the intranet. That's about to be worked on as well. So a modern fire alarm will help us identify different events as well, you know, whether it's a gas leak or a bomb alert, say, or a normal fire or things like that. We'll be able to work on that. So we're getting the latest update now. So this procedure is being rolled out in the next few weeks.
Okay, so are there any other further comments or questions on the report? No? So just again, thank you, Mike, for presenting the report. I would say that, you know, despite the very difficult financial pressures that have been imposed upon this council by the government, we seem to be managing the risk the best we can in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But it's helpful that we went through that and just to understand the different areas and the work that's going on, not just by yourself, but the other officers and staff across the organisation. So I'm going to move from the chair the recommendations that members note the progress of actions identified within the corporate risk register. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Greensmith has seconded that. So all those in favour? Thank you. So I understand that moving on now, we have a confidential item, is that correct? Are we moving that tonight or? No. Okay, that might be for next time. Yeah. Okay. Item 9 then, there's no other item which I consider urgent or received. And I formally close the meeting. Thank you very much, members, for attending this evening. And thank you to the staff and officers and Mazars, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much.